Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zokol.
Well, hey, everybody. It's another episode of Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with my good friend, PGA Tour winner, and all-around great guy, Richard Zokol. How are you, Richard?
I'm well, Colin. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm glad to be home. It was a wonderful trip. I'm certainly glad to be home. And I'm glad to share a few things, updates regarding the podcast. So for those of you out there who are already listening and enjoying Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast, we are going to be available on the platforms by this time next week at the latest, and hopefully sooner than that. So you're going to be able to find us on Apple Music, Spotify. You're going to be able to subscribe. You're going to find out everything that's going on. You're going to be able to contribute show topics. You're going to help us solve cold cases. I mean, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
Do you mean
awesome.
We're going to be plugged into the world?
Well, we're going to be plugged in the world. The entire world is going to be able to let us know what they think about us as we let them know how we're feeling about what's going on with golf these
progress.
days.
We're making
progress. Exactly. We're turning legit, Richard. It's amazing.
Good.
So I wanted to jump in, as we like to, sort of talk about what happened on tours this week. And we'll talk about the LPGA in a moment, but I do want to touch on the Farmers in San Diego, Torrey Pines, and runaway victory by Justin Rose.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
My thoughts.
I have some thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the world can conclude that Justin Rose put on, we could call it clinical, we could call it disciplined, we can call it dominant. It was a beautiful piece of artwork and mechanical skill, physically and mentally. Shoot 62, 65, 68, 70. And, going into the final round, and I do want to look forward to talking about that whole group, because they're playing alongside Justin Rose was Joel Damon, and Rio Hitsasumi, if I pronounced it right. I'll just call him Rio.
Rio. Okay.
And
blame it on Rio.
That's right. Playing on a brutal golf course, Torrey Pines South, that was changed for the U.S. Open by Reese Dye a few years ago, just made it.
Reese Jones.
Reese Jones, that's right. Thank you very much for that. He made it very difficult and took the playability out of it, just made it brutal. It's a great fair test of golf and all that stuff, but boy, oh boy, if you don't have your game together, the thick rough, the greens, and these Poana greens, I'm just watching, finished watching it, and I can go back emotionally to my years on tour, and the Poana in those greens at Torrey Pines are always brutal. You have to hit the putts in order to keep its line harder than you like, because what you don't want to do is, if you miss it or lip it out, it's going 4 feet by, and you have just another tough putt as it is, and you can really, if you're not, it's as if the hole has shrunk at Torrey Pines, because the greens are the Poana greens, and they're unique Poana greens. Everything one on the West Coast is Poana greens, but the ones at Torrey's are brutal. What were your initial thoughts when you watched Justin play yesterday?
Well, I'm with you. We've seen sort of performances over the years where somebody just sort of seems to put on an absolute clinic, and it's like, everybody else is, Scheffler's done it lots of times, and we talked about. What was interesting as I was watching is my memories of Justin Rose and the tie-in to our conversation last week. I mean, we literally talked about Blades Brown and what he was going to face as a phenom, and here's Justin Rose at 45, was just, it seems like yesterday, was the Blades Brown, albeit the UK edition, of the day.
Yes.
And here he is.
Yeah, he was still an amateur. Was it at Troon or Carnoustie? And he was an amateur, and he finished, he sunk his shot on the last hole.
Yeah.
And he was going to be the next, phenom golfer in the world. And he just hit a brick wall going 100 miles an hour. Couldn't play. Yeah. And, the great thing about it, and this is a testament to him and his commitment to, at 45 years old, he's got 13 wins. This guy, he practices harder. He travels with this in his bus with a whole fitness trailer behind him that has an ice plunge, a red light therapy bed, a fitness is infrared saunas and oxygen therapy and a spin bike. So this guy at 45 years old, this is just to hold back aging, and with his mind, he's got a very strong competitive mind, and I guess it's so impressive. The only question is, why hasn't he been knighted yet in England? Why have they donned the sword? King Charles given him the appointment for the British. I'm not even sure what I can't remember what they call the British Empire.
Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
He's going to be, if he's not like Sir Nick Faldo
right.
soon, he should be, right?
He needs a Sir in front of his name.
He needs the Sir, yes, absolutely. Although I have to say, when you said red light therapy bed, I was like, I think if you're in Amsterdam, that has a completely different meaning. But wow, well, but I think it, tying back to the conversation from last week, what was interesting for me was, you're absolutely right. Development of the player is not linear necessarily. It's not like you kind of go necessarily.
And there's no guarantees. There are no guarantees.
And it's a weight. The lows can be much lower and the highs can be much higher. And it's not sort of like, oh, he just got 10% better each year. He can go down 30%. And then go up 80%.
What I think happened is, as he was pushing, and he's 45 right now, as he got into his early 40s, he kind of saw the light, or the lack of light, or at the end of the tunnel, and then said, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to give it. And I think he's probably motivated by knighthood for his and in order to do that, he's got he's won the gold medal. He's won a U.S. Open. I think he needs another major. I think he's right now good enough, but he's on the cusp of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But if he gets another major, it would really solidify it. And I think he deserves one. I hope he's able to achieve it, because putting at 45 years old, doing that, and his mental strength that he's been able to develop and be able to play in the manner in which he did, to stave off any possibilities of anyone coming up behind him this past week. It was clinical.
Yeah, I agree. It was a lot of fun to watch the Ryder Cup. A lot of fun. Had maybe the greatest up and down I ever saw from the side of the bleachers there, where it's like absolute jail. But yeah, and then I think, keeping on with Farmers, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't spend some time talking about Brooks Koepka's return to the tour. He obviously didn't finish at the top, but he was around and played the game. What was your take on Mr. Koepka's reemergence on the PGA Tour?
Well, I think we all know that he is, has been in the past, and we haven't seen him for 4 years, bristly by nature. And and the body language that he go ahead.
Bristly, some of us would say an asshole, but it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
And then, but what we saw of him when he came back, and it could be because of his new perspective, why he wants to be around family. It's not about him anymore. And also, if you just kind of look back, he was getting bored when he was on the PGA Tour. It seemed like he only got up for the majors anyway. He was bored with the typical PGA Tour event, so he must have gotten really bored on the typical live events. So a combination of traveling worldwide, there's more time on the jet and flying around and spending time on the other side of the globe, away from his family. Right. He has matured, and he has a different perspective about him. He seemed to be very humble. He seemed to have a desire to be liked in interviews. And so I'm going, oh wow, and everyone's going, whoa, this isn't the Brooksy we know before. Yeah. So, and the fact that he wants this is kind of like turning over a new leaf, and interesting to see if he's going to be able to do it, because and the importance of him being able to make the cut. The question is, he's supposed to be bringing a huge amount of equity to the PGA Tour, and a few years ago, 4 years ago, when he had that knee injury, it looked as though he might have been at the end of his line, and he took the live because it was just good money, simple as that. But we're going to see, and we're going to give him a few chances, obviously, to see if he turns into the old Brooks Koepka, or if he maintains his humbleness, his sense of graciousness, his new perspective in the world, and we get to see what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
it's fast. It's going to be great to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, I caught some of the presser, and one of the things that stood out to me was that he reached out. His first outreach when he decided he wanted to do this was to Tiger Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned sort of, and then the question was, well, why would you reach out to Tiger Woods? And he said, well, I don't really know Rolap, the new head guy for the PGA Tour, and I wanted to reach out to somebody that I'm comfortable with and who I'm friends with, and get their input and guidance on how to do this. And I thought, to your point, it showed a sense of sort of humility, kind of, instead of like send out the bat signal and have him call me, I want to come back. He was very much, like I want to navigate this properly, and looking for counsel, which I think up till now is probably something we wouldn't have expected.
On another, speaking of staying on the same subject as Liv, our good friend Patrick Reed almost won his second tournament in a row, which would have probably solidified his top 10 on the DP World Tour. He got himself into a sudden death playoff, but he's on track. We can expect Patrick Reed to be back on the PGA Tour in 2027. That's for sure.
Yes, I agree, unless they change the rules just to thwart him, which, right now, who knows? So maybe they do that. They can go through all that trouble to win all those tournaments, and then look what happens. I think it would be really, really funny if they did that. But yeah, by all rights, he should be back on.
I think they see the value in the bad guy that he is. I think they have to welcome him back. I think it would be good. And
he is a good villain.
And the thing is too is he doesn't have to pay a $5 million fine and gets him in right away like Brooks. Right. I mean, he's banned for a year, so he cannot play for this year. So his that's his penalty. He has to stay out.
A long and winding road, eh? He's going to play in some parts of the world he probably didn't even know existed.
Well, it's interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens.
Yeah. Today's episode of Tough Lives is brought to you by Fairway Foresight, the AI-powered digital caddy, yardage, and strategy app for golfers who want to stop making the same mistake every single round. Fairway Foresight doesn't just give you a number; it analyzes your patterns, your shot tendencies, their dispersion, and decision making, and then it shows you what you should do, not what you wish would happen. If you ever thought, I probably shouldn't hit driver here, and hey, who hasn't? But I'm going to hit driver anyways, this app is the one for you.
So moving on, there was the return of the LPGA Tour Tournament of Champions. Yeah, Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions.
There was some shenanigans in there, was there?
Yeah. Have you ever had that? Well, let's explain. Why don't we explain for the audience what happened first of all? So basically, as I read it, they had some, it was very cold. Tampa Bay Lightning fan that I was watching the hockey game to see they were playing an outdoor game. Coldest time in Tampa in I don't know how long, which is great for making ice, but terrible for golf. And the tournament's over at Lake Nona, which is an hour and a half away.
And so it's at Orlando.
Yeah, and it was cold. They didn't quite finish the night before. There's a few people left to finish. Right. And then there was a decision made at 10:30 in the morning that they should sort of abandon ship on basically, other than that the people who still need to finish were going to finish, that they weren't going to play the final round. And they have a celebrity portion of the tournament. They played. Yeah. But the tour players did not play. And Annika Stormstam, who, if she isn't the best of all time, she's certainly in that discussion. She even was around, and she was saying, I don't understand why they're not playing the final round.
Right.
Have you ever had anything like that happen when you were on tour?
Well, no. The PGA Tour, they we've had many times where the final round has been delayed for whatever reason. And also, let me just jump ahead to a past story. I played in the Dunhill Cup in frost, when the ground was frost, at the old course at St. Andrews. And I recall walking, and with each step, you're collecting a little more frost under your feet in your spikes. And when I got to the green, we had like 2 inches of frost, of ice that you had to chip off our shoes, and we still played. And so, and quite frankly, I don't think you'd play there with those conditions now. But when they decided that it was too cold, but you're right, Annika came back and said, this is ridiculous. Sure, it's cold out there, but the golf course is playable. What they could have done or should have done, and this every time I've been in many of these delays where the final round is postponed, if you can't get the round in on Sunday, you play on Monday. So all they did was go, well, they looked at the forecast for Monday that, it was projected as to be the same, forecasted to be the same. And well, what you do is you wait there and sit with those players ready. When the window opens, you go. The PGA Tour guys we've had these things numerous times. So it does look like and in their comments, in their statement after the round, it sounded like they were apologizing for their decisions and that they'll learn more in the future. So I'm kind of my perception on this thing is like, what? So
what exactly?
You got to throw it on the new CEO. The buck stops with him. But I think this was a real black eye for the LPGA. I think they really mishandled it, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it's just because it's cold. It's golf tournaments unless the golf course is unplayable, they need to play.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. And let's also state it's the Tournament of Champions, right? So if any group should be finishing a tournament, I'm going to say that group. And it's a reduced field because it's the Tournament of Champions.
39 players.
So they could have literally sent 20 players off of each side, and you could have done a crisscross and done in like easily 4.5 hours.
And waited. And as it turned out, Monday, which is today, while we're shooting this thing, it was a lovely day in Orlando. And if they were ready to play, they would have finished So black eye to the LPGA. They really
black eye to the LPGA. Well, now you're gonna get me started, Richard. Okay. So I wanted to do a deeper. It's funny. I wanted to do a deeper dive today because we want to talk about what's going on topically.
Let's hear it.
About the tour, but I have some thoughts. About the in particular. I would characterize it sort of my view or my lens on the LPGA Tour and women in professional golf in general is there's a distinct lack of leadership across the board, not just with the tour itself, but more broadly. And so we had a really wonderful discussion. Both of us said a couple of times we met on the weekend. We're like, the mic should be on right now because this is really good stuff. And you gave me a lot to think about. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to I want to make a case.
Okay.
I'm the type, I guess it's my educational background, but I'm the type that I don't like to complain about things without thinking about, well, what would be a possible solution? I don't, sitting and complaining doesn't solve anything. And so I was thinking about, well, what would I do then to try to address what is clearly a large disparity between the compensation levels between the LPGA Tour and the PGA Tour. Mm-hmm. And I realize there's some sensitivities around this, and there'll be some people who, once they have the ability to communicate with us, will want to say some things, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. That's what this show is about. And for me, I look at it and I say, it's not so to contextualize. I don't think it's a market problem. I think it's a leadership problem. And my argument is we look at professional women's tennis run by the USTA, the one continent away from being the USGA, mm-hmm. right? Their purse for the US Women's Open and the Men's Open is equal. In Wimbledon, just like the RNA, in Wimbledon, the Women's Open, Men's Open, the purse is equal. My argument is, and that everyone traces the origin of all of that back to Billie Jean King and her stand that she took a long time ago. We are where we are in professional golf. And so to me, the question is, well, there is a fair argument and to be made. Well, it's ratings based. Mm-hmm. There's lower ratings for women's golf. Therefore, on a proportional basis, that they're getting paid whatever the fair sort of equivocation is based on that. That's where sponsors look at ratings. Ratings drive sponsor what you can charge, and therefore that's what goes in the purse. My argument would be, I think that that's a paradigm that could be changed. I think we see evidence in other sports where it is equal. And what I would propose, so then the question is, well, smart guy, how would you go about doing it? And here's my thought. So I want to run this by you as an idea. The other thing I should say, when I want to contextualize this, and this is again speaks to my education background. I taught marketing. One of the things we talk about in marketing is what's called decision heuristics, which are the mental shortcuts we make when we buy things. We can't get along without them. And this one of the most simple examples is we make price quality judgments every day. And one of the quickest ones is if it's cheaper, it must not be very good quality, or if it's very expensive, it must be of great quality. We do it all the time. And so I think a lot of people make that natural association when it comes to golf. They assume because the women are being paid, and just for context, if you look it up, as I did, it's about, for the majors, it's about, women make about 40% of the purse of the men in terms of the winning prize, okay? So my argument would be, if you're the USGA or the RNA, there is more than enough money to put an equal purse out and set the example.
So are you talking
specifically
else about like the U.S. Open and both
yes.
men's and the women's, and that's it, not the tours?
I'm not saying the tour at all.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the net effect, I would argue, would be that it would reframe the game for the other tournaments. Maybe I would be proven wrong, and they would just stay where they are. But I would like to see at least an experiment where they said, okay, for the next 5 years, or whatever it is, we're going to pay the women, men for these organizations. Because keep in mind, I looked, again, I did some research prepping for tonight. The annual budget for the USGA, you want to guess what that is? $312 million. They can afford to pay an equal purse.
Well, the $1 billion contract they got from Fox for about 6-8 years ago.
They can do it.
Okay.
So it's not a question. It's not a question of for those two events. That
are you're talking just those two events? Or are you talking about across the board?
Yeah. I'm saying for these two events, with the idea that once that happens, there would be a spillover positive effect on the purses for the other events. But these are ones in my mind that are majors, that are, the organizations that they are run by collect fees from all of us, men and women, for their operating costs. I would also argue one of the things that in my research was that women are 60% of the growth of golf since 2019. Over half of that is women 30 or less. There is a strong upward trend in participation from women. I don't think there's been any recognition of that in the compensation at the highest levels in terms of professional golf. I think the disparities remain the same, if anything, gotten worse. And so for me, I would just it's one of the things that drove my interest in doing this podcast with you at all, which is to say, I think we need to have these sort of conversations. And I would love to have investigator or tough reporters putting their hand up at the next USGA annual meeting saying, why is the purse not equal? You've got the money.
Interesting.
You can set the example here.
Well,
and
finish up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to me, I just think it would be, again, I was trying to propose a solution to what I perceive to be a significant disparity. I recognize I don't know that anybody's going to listen to me when it comes to this, but it's an idea. And I think, I would love to see more discussion around it. And I would love to see, one of the things I don't see nearly enough of in the game is hard questions being asked of people in leadership positions consistently.
I think you're bang on that one, and that can lead to a whole bunch of things that I think that we'll talk about in the future as well.
Yeah.
But you do bring up a very good point. In that, as it relates to the RNA and the USGA, And the fact that they're governing bodies, yes, they are making a lot of money right now. I think that I think that model would only work through the USGA and the RNA, and I think it should start there and see perhaps where it goes. I think the LPGA is a product, just like and now the PGA Tour until this year it's now a for-profit. So they're going to look at things differently now, and I think that both are market-driven products. And the demand in the market really drives the numbers. And the PGA Tour is in a pickle right now because they're playing in some deep water with billions of dollars of investment capital. And if they don't provide a return on investment, that could be a real big risk. Or that is a big risk, and it could be a real big problem.
Sure.
And now the LPGA, in its entity, if they don't get the numbers of viewers or have a compelling story or have these, athletes that like Michelle Weiss and Annika Sorenstam, they're going to have a hard time if it isn't compelling. So though they will, the revenue's going to be based on the ratings there. So I think that I would, I think what you proposed for the USGA, because they have the deep pockets to do it, they should do that. And I think now they're making a move to playing some of the better golf courses, because the men used to, playing Pinehurst and Marion and Winged Foot and Congressional and all the, Pebble Beach and all the great ones. They're starting to do that as well. So I think they do need a boost in their business plan.
Yeah, and I know we are going to have a robust conversation when it comes to the Masters and Augusta National, but I would argue that's another one. They do this women's amateur thing at Augusta. There is nothing stopping Augusta National from having a women's Masters at Augusta National. I absolutely
agree with you on that one, and thought that myself. Why aren't they doing that? I think they should, and they don't need to do it at the point of a bayonet like that Martha, whatever her name was back in the day. But also, we're going to be talking about USGA and issues with that, down the road, and other segments on rolling the ball back. That whole distance issue. So there's an in-depth discussion that we're going to have later on down the line as well. So, but I like your ideas. It's not a bad idea. Start with the U. I think it should be with the USGA and the RNA. I think that. They need to
I think it's a good. I think it's at least a worthwhile experiment, and I think at minimum, it signals, if you're those organizations, that you're saying, okay, what happens on the LPGA Tour is not on us. Like, the interesting thing is the PGA Tour doesn't run a major, right? They don't run a single major, and
they do the Players Championship.
Which they would
try to make it a major.
They pray every night, someone will recognize it as a major, but it will never happen. And I just look at it and say, this is rather than consider it to be cost, I would consider it to be a huge opportunity. Like, you want to get some, like, just the positive press alone, I think, for that switch would be so huge for the game, by making that conscious choice and saying, you know what, this has been wrong for a long time. We're going to do our part, and this is how it's going to work when it comes to our events. We can't tell other people how to run their business, but we're going to do it this way. And it would be neat to see.
Yeah. That's a good one. Let's talk about Joel Dahmen.
Yes, please.
Joe Dahmen, interesting fellow. He
yes. He's the uncoolest guy in golf, right?
Yeah, the hat doesn't serve him well. and also, he's a real nice guy. He's very close. Washington State guy. Very close friends with Nick Taylor. They went to college together. Damon's he's won a tournament. He's a good player. He finished outside the top 100 and was an alternate. He's a guy who's a better player than he thinks he is. He's pretty self-deprecating, and I wish you would stop doing that. I did reach out to Nick Taylor. I reached out to try and help him, because when he was struggling. He struggles with his perspective. I honestly believe. So earlier this week, he's outside of the top 100. So he was an alternate in the Farmers Insurance Open this past week, like fourth alternate. So because Brooks Koepka comes in, they add a field, so he's got to add a whole new Brooks and then 2 other guys to make up another threesome for the first round of the tournament. So they increased the field, and it inevitably chain reacted where Joel Damon got in, and he goes in and shoots 63 the second round, and it's going to turn his life around if he finishes second. Yeah. This is where they can play yourself. If he finished second yesterday in San Diego, he would have qualified for the series events in this. There's 5 guys that could qualify. Right. So he would be getting in these. Yeah. So his jump from the outhouse straight up to the penthouse is just happening. And good for him. And when you look at a guy like him, you want him, he's playing in the last round. Justin Rose, who's leading and holding off, he's got a 7-shot lead, and Joel is playing with him. And Joel says the only way he's got a chance is if Justin Rose doesn't set his alarm and he sleeps in and misses the round. So I'm hoping that, I don't know Joe Damon. He got very famous on the Netflix event, and I think it added to a lot of popularity outside, and he's pretty much a shy guy as well, and he wasn't really comfortable with it. He wasn't really comfortable playing in the final group. But he played really well, and I was so impressed with his routine. He did exceptionally well, and he's getting his legs back, and he's going to be able to get back to the PGA Tour through this. And I just hope that he gets his belief system to a point where he can just start to stop the self-deprecation and take himself seriously and become the player that he's capable of being.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's. I had something I wanted to bring up to you about the mental side of the game this week, which I'm going to in a moment. But I do think we'll push this to a future show. But I think there's a deeper dive subject area around. I call it the fear of success. In pro golf, where you get to a certain level, but then that notion or that idea that you could be the person holding up the trophy. Some people shrink from
absolutely,
and it's a mental thing. They have the ability. They're on the tour. They obviously have the ability.
Mo Norman's biggest thing. He would play well enough so he knew he could win, and then he'd bogey the last few holes on purpose just so he didn't have to speak at the podium as the champion.
Yeah.
Seriously,
not amazing. So, but I wanted you're being too modest, in my view. You have been doing some mental work with a couple of players that we know. And there was an article in Score Golf magazine that I caught where you spent some time with one of our Canadian golfing professionals who has had a disastrous year last year, and wasn't, he's had one of the best swings in my view, beautiful golf swing, but has underperformed obviously, which would lead one to think it's got to be on the mental side of the game. So I'm curious, can we talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm curious. You've been working with Adam Hadwin, or the article mentioned you worked with Adam Hadwin, and he just came second on the Corn Ferry this week.
Well, so here's how
clearly he's rebounding.
Here's how Bob Weeks wrote an article, and I guess I interviewed Adam, and Adam told him that he had reached out, and Bob wrote the article that Adam reached out to me. He didn't reach out to me. I reached out to him the last 4 weeks of the PGA Tour, and I reached out to him. I said, "Look, I can help you." And so we the last 3 weeks of the PGA Tour event, I got him onto MindTrack, taught him the system. He got it, and he implemented it in Bahamas, and he got into contention. He almost won that tournament. So basically, this system that I used, Adam introduced to Adam, he was able to pick up on it, and but he came away from the thing still a little confused. He hadn't kind of reconciled things in his mind on whether it was a swing thing or a mental thing, and he struggles with that. So at the end of the year, I reached out to him and spoke to him, and he says, well, he's going to go back to working with Mark Blackburn, which means it's a swing thing, I believe. And he's still trying to figure things out. But he did have a good tournament. I sent him a text. I said, great playing. But I said, look, anytime. I personally think it's a mental, and how Bob Weeks wrote the article, it was clearly a mental situation that you start to slide. And I said to Adam, I said, look, I've been there. I've been on the PGA Tour. I've played poorly, fell out of it, lost my card, had to go back to the buy.com tour, which is a Corn Ferry tour. And I did this at age 43 and then climbed my way back and finished in the top. I mean, back then it wasn't the top 20, it was the top 15, and got my card back at the age of 45 on the PGA Tour. So I said, look, I'm a person who's been there, done that. And these golf swing coaches, I don't think they have. But anyway, you have to be ready to accept what this is. And if you're still kind of one of those guys that you think it's golf swing rather than anyone else, then you'll probably kind of not figure it out until when you need to come around before you understand it. That it's a mental thing. So we hope he does well. I think he's he's got a good golf game. He's got a good swing. He's very determined to get back. So I think he will climb his way back to the PGA Tour next year.
Yeah. I hope to see it. I mean, he seems like a very affable guy, and I just, to me, it's like, I mean, how wonderful is it for him and for others that you have this opportunity to sort of speak to somebody on your level. It'd be one thing if Joe off the street called and said, "Oh, you got a problem." It's like, no, I have been there. I know exactly what you're going through, and I can help you. And I think that's just a really, really wonderful story. So way to go.
Well, I mean, we're rooting for him and hoping he's going to be able to get that job done.
Yeah. So let's wrap up this week. It's I love the discussion we've had this week. Well, wait, before we do that, you had a story you wanted to share.
I do.
I totally forgot. Yes,
okay.
Please. Because I have to tell you, but I have to tell you, my wife was on the plane because she loves me very much. She listened to the episode and she was killing herself laughing about that Simon Hobday story that you told. And so much so that the guy next to her thought she had lost her mind. So I can't wait to hear what you got for us this week.
All right, so this is back in the early '80s. I don't know if it was my second year on tour, and there's a guy out there. We're Monday qualifying, so it must have been no, I don't think it was Monday qualifying. We're in Orlando, Disney World. We're playing the Magnolia course, Disney World event, and I'm playing with this guy named Jack Ferenz. I'm sure you haven't heard of him. Jack Ferenz, he was a good friend of mine. Nice guy, good, a tour player as a Monday Morning Rabbit. Never won anything out there. The thing about Jack is he liked to smoke his pot. And he liked to smoke pot all the time.
This is getting better already. Okay.
So we're playing in there, and we're on the golf course, and he had these these squinty eyes, and he always looked high, and he was always kind of around the edges, and we're on the tee, and Jack's going to hit second. I'm hitting cleanup, and he says to me, "Look, I've got to go over here to the bush. I've got to take a leak, and if it's my turn, you go ahead and hit. If I'm not done my business." I said, "Okay, sure." So we watch the guy we're playing with. He hits his tee shot, he hits it down, and I look over to Jack to see where he is in his program here, and he's in full, let's put it this way, he's in full stream, and he hasn't picked up on the headwinds, and the wind is blowing 25, and his urine stream is coming out, and it's blowing back on his feet and on the bell bottoms of his pants, and his head's up, and he's looking around like this, and he's doing his business, and we're watching him do this. And then his head goes down like this, and he jumps back up like this, and we're watching him, and he comes over. His shoes are wet, his pants are wet, and we're laughing our asses off. And he comes up to me, he looks at me, and goes, "Forgot how to piss." And so that's my Jack Ferenz story, and he was a great guy. He's a wonderful person. He just liked getting high on the golf course.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh man, there's so many jokes rolling through there in my head. I was like, wow, I think you were too early in the advent of the show and so forth for me to start pulling out my Caddyshack references. But suffice to say, I love it. I'm Jack Ferenz. That's And that's just a great name. I'm going to say, like,
he's one of the greatest guys in the world, but it was a funny situation that I had to.
Amazing.
It came up, and I said, I got to remember that story. Tell about my buddy Jack Ferenc.
Loved it. All right. Well, so looking ahead, we got
Phoenix this week.
Big football games. Phoenix. There's a little thing called the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about that. But the Phoenix Waste Management is on. And one thing that I would mention is the Canadians have had a long track record of doing quite well at the waste management. So it should be a great week in pro golf. And I'm really looking forward to seeing sort of the chaos that is the 16th hole. I think we can have a really interesting discussion around that next week. Is it net good for golf when people are, hammered at 7 a.m. and throwing beer on the green? I mean, if you're Jack Ferenc, maybe it's a great idea. I don't know, but
yeah, it's always interesting to see it's a zoo show on the 16th hole, and we get to see, and the players. You don't want that happening every week, but one place a year is always is fine and dandy, and let the zoo show begin.
Let it begin. Anyways, well, really appreciate the conversation as always, Richard, and look forward to joining everyone next week. Keep it in the fairways. It's been Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast, soon to be on all major platforms. Look forward to seeing you there. Follow us, like us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much. Good being with you.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall.